let's talk about something hugely important, and I guess we don't have any sound to go along with it. I thought I wanted something on Bernie talking about the Yemen resolution. Okay, so basically yesterday, and the Senate actually already did this a couple of months ago, and the Trump administration will reject it, I'm sure. But I'm going to read now from the Hill. This is hugely important. Again, the war in Yemen goes back to 2015. The Obama administration essentially gave some support to the Saudis and the Emiratis in this. You could use the word borderline genocidal, frankly, in terms of the rate of murder, killing, cholera, and disease outbreak. And as typical of the Obama administration, they put a few brakes on it. But I think they made the calculation. The Saudis were having a major tantrum about the Iran deal. They were, along with other, reactionary forces in D.C., from Israel and other places in the Middle East, actively trying to undermine the Obama administration. Prince Bandar wrote a column in either the Washington Post or the New York Times, basically just with Republican talking points on how feckless President Obama's leadership was. And so there was some element of, we can sacrifice the Yemeni people for the politics here. And it's goes without saying, a quite disgusting and shameful policy and decision. It was accelerated and massively enhanced under Donald Trump, as, of course, all global civilian casualties. We haven't even covered the fact that a new Trump administration directive will basically add an even greater layer of secrecy to civilian deaths from drones, from U.S. drones across the world. And, of course, there's all of the questions and air of, very likely corruption between the Saudis and people like Jared Kushner. So this is the backdrop of what has been a daily mass murder campaign. Schools have been bombed, school buses, funeral homes. Tens of thousands of civilians have died. There's food shortages. There's been a cholera outbreak, as I mentioned before. And the Senate has voted to stop basically funding and supporting this war through things like a jet refueling. Bernie Sanders, along with Chris Murphy and Mike Lee, has taken the lead on this. But really, again, Sanders has been the main engine. Chris Murphy deserves a huge amount of credit. I believe he was talking about this before Yemen was really on the radar. And then, of course, also Ro Khanna in the House. This is Bernie Sanders talking about the vote yesterday.
That the United States of America will not simply follow the despotic lead of a government in Saudi Arabia and do what they want us to do. We are the most powerful nation on earth. We will determine our military and our foreign policy and not be led around by a murderous regime. So that is an important accomplishment. Second of all, what we are saying today is that in the midst of the worst humanitarian disaster on the planet, where 85,000 children have already starved to death, where we are fearing imminent famine and perhaps the death of millions of people, what we are saying now is we've got to end that war. We've got to help the people of Yemen with food, with humanitarian supplies, not with more bombs. So today we have said loudly and clearly in a bipartisan way that the United States will no longer participate in the Saudi-led war in Yemen. Thirdly, and very consequentially, what the United States Senate did today, and I expect that the House will once again do in a few weeks, is we are reasserting the constitutional authority of the United States Congress in terms of war making. For many years, under Democratic presidents, under Republican presidents, the Congress has abdicated its responsibility and allowed presidents to take our people into war without congressional authority. And today we say that ends.
This is absolutely right. The second part of this is, of course, also hugely important. I'm going to quote now from The Intercept. The Republican-led Senate voted for the second time to end American role in Yemen's war on Wednesday, a sign of continuing concerns over the impact of the Saudi-led intervention and persistent frustration with the Trump administration's close relationship with Saudi Arabia. Of course, this is still in the heels of the Jamal Khashoggi murder that Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump have run interference and supported MBS and the Saudi regime on. The resolution, which passed by a vote of 54 to 46, directs President Donald Trump to withdraw U.S. troops from quote-unquote hostilities in the Saudi-led intervention, which the resolution's backers interpret to include, this is really key, intelligence sharing and mid-air fueling. I'm going to skip ahead. John Cornyn, who if Beto O'Rourke wanted to help this country, he would be challenging. John Cornyn, a far-right monster who literally tweeted out a Mussolini quote a couple of weeks ago. I don't know how many people remember that. He, of course, voted against this measure, and he's part of the genocide caucus in Yemen. John Cornyn, along with every single Republican and Democrat who would vote against this measure. He said this, while he was concerned by the humanitarian crisis, there are, quote, a lot of things that the United States does to help our friends and allies that are not lethal. And that includes intelligence sharing, fueling, and logistical support. I think former Defense Secretary Mattis pointed out that a lot of what we're doing was actually avoiding collateral damage, something that the Saudis left to their own devices were not as good at as we are. So that is the same disgusting defense that Joe Manchin wheeled out when he voted against a resolution a couple years ago on arms sales to Saudi, which is that, oh, no, by being involved in allowing them to bombard and murder Yemenis every day, we're actually holding it back from being even worse, which is empirically false because, first of all, the American-made weapons are like the literal things that are doing the killing here, from companies like Lockheed and General Dynamics. And also, the Saudis have logistical limits. They don't have actually a particularly powerful army. They rely on a huge amount of U.S. support. So their ability to carry out the extent of their operations would be materially impacted by U.S. and U.K. withdrawal of support. Not to mention the fact that if we exerted diplomatic pressure, maybe that would help the broader diplomatic process in Yemen instead of treating the Yemeni people as a sacrifice. So that was the serious stuff.